Okay, in this section, we're going to talk about why autism appears to be on the rise and whether or not that really is the case. First off, I want to reference these materials. These are from Dr. Stephen Brock and his colleagues from the University of Cal State University Sacramento and Irvine School District and Thomas School District. And these were presented at the CASP convention back in 2007. CASP is the California Association of School Psychologists, who's a great resource for assessment training and information. Okay, first off, there's several factors that might explain changing autism spectrum disorder rates in the general population. This includes updating of the diagnostic criteria in the latest DSM, and also its inclusion as a federal handicapping condition under IDEA. There is certainly heightened public awareness of autism. There's an increased willingness and ability to diagnose autism and availability of resources for children with autism. A lot of these have to do with pushing early screening in preschools, especially in publicly funded preschools. And then there remains to be, sort of that last bullet point, there remains to be seeing what environmental factors can be identified that contribute to autism. Okay, so part of the apparent increase in identification is really the need for increased vigilance. And what that means is practitioners, pediatricians, psychologists, teachers are definitely more attuned to looking for signs and symptoms in earlier ages. And there's a reason for that, and that is that many cases of autism won't be identified before school age. In fact, the average age of autistic disorder identification is 5.5, so that's right around school entry. And then for Asperger's, it's actually much older. It's 11 years of age. That would be somewhere around 5th grade. The other reason for increased vigilance among the school personnel is most children with autism are identified by school resources. In fact, there's only 3% of students with ASD are identified solely by non-school resources. So there's a very, very small percentage that are going to come to you as new kindergartners that have already been identified with an autistic spectrum disorder. And then other kids are identified by a combination of school or non-school resources. That's about 57%, or solely by the school, 40%. So think about that. 40% of the kids in your career that have autistic spectrum disorders are going to be identified only by school resources. This slide just gives you an overview of the diagnostic classifications. Autism spectrum disorders come under the DSM category of pervasive developmental disorders. This includes autistic disorder, which is the full-blown autism, sort of the classical autism, Asperger's disorder, PDD-NOS, which may have traits or combinations of different autistic characteristics, but not enough to meet the full diagnostic criteria, Rett's disorder, and then childhood disintegrative disorder. These are much rarer, and we'll talk briefly about these. These are not that you all are going to become autistic diagnosticians, but you need this information as you see reports that have these different diagnoses listed. Okay, so let's start with autistic disorder. This is markedly abnormal or impaired development in social interaction and communication and a markedly restricted repertoire of activities and interests. So, this could be a student who is completely nonverbal or who has very, very severe speech and language delays, and the markedly restricted repertoire of behaviors and interests, meaning that there's a lot of highly specialized interests or maybe even stereotype behaviors or a combination of both. Asperger's disorder is markedly abnormal or impaired development and social interaction and a markedly restricted repertoire of activities and interests, but language abilities and cognitive functioning is not affected. So you may see the social impairment and limited behavioral interests, but largely language and cognition is intact. PDD-NOS has experienced difficulty in at least 2 of the 3 autistic disorder symptom clusters, but does not meet diagnostic criteria for any other PDD. So you may see traits, cluster of 2 or 3 of these, but doesn't meet the full diagnostic criteria.